Hello and welcome to Pass the Hot Sauce, a Roswell podcast. I'm Eliza Ora.
And I'm Lorena Rose.
And we're here to talk about every episode of the 1999 WB series Roswell, one episode at a time, spoiler-free. Today we're discussing Season 2, Episode 17, Cry Your Name.
According to IMDb, this is the one where one of their closest friends die in suspicious circumstances. Each character deals with it differently. Liz is in denial, refusing to believe that her friend would commit suicide. Maria falls apart, leaning on a surprisingly caring Michael for support. Isabel believes her friend's death was her fault. Kyle tries to stay strong, and Max finds himself jealous that Sean is there for Liz when he can't be.
That's not a thing.
Yeah, I know.
Sean is in Albuquerque, like, for court or something.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not around.
And then it finishes with Liz makes an accusation that could ultimately crush her relationship with not only Max, but with the entire pod squad.
Ba, ba, ba.
Yeah. So this episode was directed by Alan Croker, who this is the first of 3 episodes that he will direct for Roswell. He's also directed all across television history. Most notably in my book, though, he had directed an episode of True Calling, a TV show that I love.
Is that the one with Eliza Dushku?
It is. He directed an episode of Firefly. He directed episodes of Avonlea on the Disney Channel from back in the day, and like tons of Star Trek. And then this episode was written by Jason Katims and Ronald D. Moore, who, of course, we know Jason Katims is the creator of the show, and Ronald D. Moore has got his hands all over this show. So
He sure does, yeah. The dream team, those two.
Mm-hmm. So this episode opens on Maria giving her weird recap in front of the chalkboard again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably going to be one of the only amusing parts of this entire episode.
It is amusing. It's fun.
Yes.
I don't like when she's talking about Kyle, that his feelings were a little more sibling than sex kitten.
Yeah.
Was that necessary? Like, did she have to say that? Also, interesting note, so this episode has commentary by Ronald D. Moore on the DVDs. So I watched the version with commentary. There's a lot of really cool stuff. So I'll be referencing that throughout our conversation today.
Sweet.
So he talked about this cold open, this like weird thing that they decided to do. He said that they were, looking for ways to engage the audience and to get them hooked. And that Maria and Mahandra was an audience favorite, that she was like so engaging and fun. So they wanted to use her for it. He said it worked with mixed success. And part of the reason that they wanted to do it, he said, was because they were worried about the ratings, whether they would be picked up for a 3rd season. And I guess the network said they didn't like their recaps anymore, like the way that they were doing recaps. So they just
like the same way that every TV show does recaps.
I know, that's what I thought. It's like their recaps weren't different from anyone else.
Exactly.
Just the previously on, a normal previously on. But he said that he kind of said that. So I don't know.
All right.
I like that he said it worked with mixed success.
I mean, I guess some people probably like it. We might not be those people, but maybe some people like it.
Like, I don't hate it. Like, it's fun. If it were if this talking to the camera thing were a part of this show.
Yeah, but it's not.
So it just doesn't fit. Like, I like shows that break the fourth wall or whatever, but this show doesn't normally do that.
Yeah, exactly. This is not The Office. This is not one of those shows where they continuously break the fourth wall. It's just completely random. To me, it takes me out of it, but...
Yeah, same.
Doesn't draw me in.
But so then we go straight to Alex's room where he's playing this really cool acoustic bass. So cool. Oh, Ronald D. Moore talked about how the whole Sweden storyline initially came from the fact that Colin Hanks wanted to do Band of Brothers, which is, like a war HBO show.
Oh, okay.
That's supposedly really, really good. I never watched it.
Same.
I don't think it passes the Bechdel test, so I have problems with that, or just like problems enjoying those things. Obviously, it doesn't like say anything about whether a show is good or not, but yeah, it's supposed to be really good. So that was part of the reason that they were like, okay, we'll say that he went to Sweden.
Semester abroad. There we go.
Right. So this is where he mentioned that. Thought it was
Got
funny.
it. I knew that like they wrote him out because he wanted to go on to other things, but that also makes sense that they like, you know, gave him the Sweden to like, you know, give him time to do another project even before they completely wrote him off.
Right. So they were like, okay, and then we'll find a way to bring him back. So we'll say he goes to Sweden. But then, yeah, like you said, he kept getting different offers, and the show, apparently everybody like loved him. They really didn't want to stand in his way of his career growing, and they ended up like writing this storyline because of that. Like because Colin needed to leave the show to go on to, you know, do movies and whatever, that kind of was the inspiration for them to even write Alex's death into the show at all, which has a huge impact obviously on the storyline. I just thought it was really nice that they were like so supportive of him and, you know, wanted to let him go do that.
Definitely.
So I hate these whole rules that you have to like play hard to get or whatever, but the girls are like, no, you have to say you're busy. Like, no, there are no rules. Don't play games. If you want to hang out with someone, hang out with them.
Yeah, same. I have the exact same notes. I'm like, why? Why are they helping him play hard to get? Just let him like her and hang out with her. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, it's so stupid. He like clearly wants to say yes.
Yeah. But he doesn't. He follows the hard to get rules and says he's going to stay home and study. The girls have to go to work. I also don't like the like weird baby voices that Maria and especially Liz use when they're like saying goodbye to him. They're like, "Be strong, Alex. Be strong."
Oh, I totally like forgot that. It's annoying.
Yeah, it's this weird baby voice thing. I'm not into it, but whatever. They go to work. A food delivery shows up, and the food delivery guy is played by an actor named Jason Dohring, who goes on to do a lot of other things after this, including iZombie and Veronica Mars.
Both Rob Thomas shows, not the Matchbox 20 guy, but the showrunner guy, the guy who creates shows with Jason Dohring.
Yep.
He has a lot of actors that he like, you know, likes to work with. So a lot of actors who were on Veronica Mars were on iZombie, and a lot of them came on for just like an episode here or there. So if you like Veronica Mars, you should definitely watch iZombie.
Nice.
It's like fun to see all those people.
I do like Veronica Mars, so I should watch iZombie.
You should. It's a really fun show. People hear zombie and they're like, ooh, but it's not like other zombie shows. Also, don't be turned off by the name of the show being really stupid. They like actually reference that in a later season in a fun way.
But the food delivery guy, Jason Dohring, shows
Logan
up.
Eccles.
Oh, yep. So he shows up, and all of a sudden Alex is acting really weird. His food is cold, which is like a bummer, but he like gets very down and distracted and weird, which is like does not match up at all with the way he was just feeling a couple minutes ago when his friends were there and when he was talking to Isabel on the phone.
Yeah, he's saying, like, everything's a lie.
What is going to happen? This is very strange.
And then we just go straight to Valenti in a car.
You
know, no big deal. Different storyline now. We've gone somewhere else. Or so we think. He
pulls up to what appears to be a traffic accident. We find out from Deputy Hansen that there has been a head-on collision with a semi, and Valenti wants to know if it's somebody he knows, and then cut to the crash down.
So something interesting here from the commentary that is really important to know, actually, if you're watching this episode or want to know about this episode, is Ronald D. Moore. He was in a really horrible accident as a teenager, and he was with a friend, and his friend ended up dying in the accident. And he said the way that he wrote this episode was greatly affected by his experience.
That's super understandable.
Yeah. And I think it like might even, I think it probably had something to do with the fact that they chose a car accident, to be the way that Alex died. And he said also that writing this episode was like cathartic in a way for him.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. So I just think it kind of, adds context and kind of shows a way to frame this. And I think it explains a lot of the choices in the writing. And I, might point that out as we go on.
Yeah. So we head to the crash down and, conveniently or not so conveniently or whatever, all of our friends are there except for Alex.
And they're having a good time.
Yeah.
They're laughing. Our one and only laugh of this episode. Which I didn't think we would get any, but
yeah,
kind of showing a juxtaposition.
Yeah, but Maria drops some dishes. She's a little bit of a klutz. Michael and Max are discussing the merits of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon versus The Matrix.
Of course.
And yeah, Isabel, Tess, and Kyle are looking through prom photos.
I'm saying, look at your face. Look at my face.
And then Valenti shows up while Maria's in the kitchen cleaning up dishes, and he lets her know there's been an accident.
And just from the look on his face, she knows there's something.
Yeah, that something is wrong.
Which is a really real thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Like someone well, you can tell if, something's going on. If I could just hop back a second to pre-horrible news being shared. Ronald D. Moore said in this, I'm just going to call him Moore from now on. Because it just feels weird to say the whole thing. So Moore said that he made this great comment about Brendan's hair. Because it's, long enough now it's being like slicked back.
Yeah.
So this is where we're seeing it slicked back. And he kind of was just like, oh, yep, Brendan's hair slicked back. And he said this was, I call this, he's like, I think this was hair number 45 for Michael. Just like commenting on all the different ways that Michael has had his hair. I just thought that was funny. So yeah, Valenti, and we know he has shared the news because Maria runs into the dining room screaming.
Yeah.
But we don't see him actually telling her the news, which is, I feel like, a thing that TV shows do.
Yeah, but he does share it to everybody when he walks into the main part of the dining room where everybody else is.
And everyone is in shock, really. And they're, kind of silent.
Yeah, I don't know how I would respond to something like this. I've never lost a friend who was super close in a really traumatic way like this, so.
Me neither. I have a close friend who has lost multiple friends, a bunch of friends, and her mother. And that is, I think, for me, like the closest that I've gotten to, really experience somebody or see somebody else's grief. And we'll be talking a lot about grief. At least I plan to, talk a lot about grief in this episode. It's a real thing and a real part of life because death is a part of life.
Yep.
And understanding grief, I think, is an important thing for people.
And I think you did some research about the stages of grief, right? That we can get into as we continue. Yeah. Before we get to that, we'll go through the opening credits, and then we end up on the dark city streets outside of the what I guess is the coroner's office, perhaps even the police.
The morgue. Yeah. So there's a sign first that says City Hall.
Yeah,
which I was
behind
like, really?
them.
City Hall? Yeah, and then when they go to like where the van is, there's a sign above the door that says morgue. Because I was like, is it the medical examiner? But yeah, it's the van says county coroner, and then above the door says morgue.
Got it. I missed that part. Valenti is gonna follow the peoples in and distract them so that Max can try and use his healing powers and bring Alex back. And this part is just so heartbreaking to me with really Isabel's narration of how it's all gonna plan out, how she's envisioning it planning out. and Max is going to heal Alex, and we're going to see the van shake, and they're going to come out, and it's going to be so funny, and then we'll have to make up excuses, and she just has it all planned out how it's going to go, and it does not go that way.
Comes out alone.
Makes me so sad.
And I think this is where I want to get into the stages of grief, because this is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 stages of grief, also known as the Kubler-Ross model, it was created by a psychiatrist named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It was first in her 1969 book called On Death and Dying. She was known for her work with terminally ill patients. So the stages of grief can happen before or after death. So a lot of what she wrote about was, people who are accepting their own death.
Mm-hmm.
So the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And, everybody experiences them differently and on different timelines. Yep. And so we get to see some of that in this episode. We don't necessarily see all the stages because it's all really fresh and it can take a long time to get to acceptance, which is the last stage. But so this scene is really, I think, where we're starting to see denial, that, they don't want to believe that he's really dead. The fact that they even went there to try to revive him is denial. Yeah.
Even if they are aliens with the power to heal, Max has not brought back someone who's been completely dead, right. If I'm not mistaken.
Max does not revive people, he heals people.
Yes, he's healed people who were perhaps on the verge of dying, but they were still living and had a chance to be saved.
Right. And I do think that this is all Liz's fault for repeatedly saying that she died. She didn't die.
She didn't die.
She didn't die. My name is Liz Parker.
And 2 days ago, 3 days ago.
3 days ago.
7 days ago.
I'm so sorry to all the fans who are mad right now that we can't remember how many days ago. It's an iconic line, but I don't remember the number. But you know what we're talking about.
I think it's 3.
I also think it's 3.
So maybe we're right. Write in and tell us if we're wrong.
Yeah, please let us know. So Maria kind of loses it when she sees the body bag, which is, completely understandable. Yep. And Michael is caring. Michael is holding her and being supportive.
Mm-hmm. Being a good boyfriend. Being a good friend.
Yeah. And Liz has just a blank look on her face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's still in shock.
Yeah. And Isabel is devastated and takes off.
Yep. Different people deal with grief differently, and some people take off. I mean, like, flight is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people need to be around others. Some people need to be alone. But even people who need to be alone need to be checked on.
Yes. Yes, they do.
Because people in mourning usually tend to not feed themselves, and for many other reasons. So classic Kyle rolling out of bed into some push-ups.
Yeah.
A classic move.
That's very Riley Finn of him.
Oh, yes. It so is. Oh my God.
It is. For our listeners who also watch Buffy or who don't watch Buffy and don't know who Riley Finn is.
Yeah. Kyle, I think, would fit in quite well at the Initiative.
Mm-hmm. Have we seen him do this before? I feel like we have.
Yeah, I think at least once. I can't imagine, but whatever, to each their own.
Yeah, no, it takes me way long to wake my brain up enough to even realize I'm pressing the snooze alarm.
Yeah, my brain and my body.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm disoriented. I feel like I can't walk in a straight line when I first wake up, let alone be coordinated enough to do push-ups.
Yeah. Oh, and then this is another part that just obviously this episode is a sad episode. It just breaks our hearts continually. But, he does his push-ups, he crawls back into bed, and then his dad comes out and, starts going on about this is not a happy day. And I don't want, remember this happened yesterday. I don't want you to associate this with today. And then we find out today is Kyle's birthday. And what a shitty thing to have.
Horrible.
The day before your birthday. For the rest of your existence, it's going to be wrapped up in at least a little bit of heartache and painful remembrance, even when you reach that acceptance point in your life.
And that's why, you know, I appreciate that Jim is acknowledging that and like trying to address that, acknowledging that like this, you know, it may be associated with his birthday, like, and it sucks. But I also, like, from a writing standpoint, I don't understand why they did this.
Yes, that too.
Why did it have to be Kyle's birthday?
I mean, I guess maybe just as a way to draw Kyle into the storyline a little bit more, because sometimes he's a little bit separated from the rest of the group. Like, he hasn't been quite as involved in the group as everybody else has. So I guess as a way to, like, tie him up in with all of it.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for them really taking the time to kind of show at least a moment of each character grieving or, you know, dealing with it, processing the death of their friend.
Very true.
You know, no matter how close they were with him, because obviously like Liz and Maria were the closest, Isabel. But, you know, Alex was a friend to all of them. Yeah. And it's a big change in their lives to lose him.
And then we cut to the crash down where Alex walks in. So, of course, this must be just a dream.
But it's not like other dream sequences. Like,
no, it's
and Ronald Ronald D. Moore talked about that. He talked about that it was an intentional move for them to just cut straight from the last scene, cut right into this scene in the crash down, just like a normal cut. And then Alex shows up. So, and it's, in a way, it's Isabel going through the stage of denial, but it's kind of the audience going through the stage of denial. Yeah. That, like, for a second, for you to believe that, like, oh my God, maybe it was all a misunderstanding and he is alive and it's all okay. I thought that was a really interesting choice. And I liked that choice.
I think it's, just even as we were talking about it, I have written down, like, it's just a dream. Why do our brains do this to us? But I almost think even like Isabel isn't necessarily dreaming so much as maybe daydreaming, just like playing out alternate scenarios. Like, it doesn't seem like she's even necessarily asleep. Like, yes, she's in bed. Yes, the lights are off, but I don't think that she's necessarily asleep. She's just playing out all the different scenarios and wishes in her mind. And like, you know, as she plays through her pain, which I mean, even not in a sense of, you know, grief, but I know my anxiety brain plays out every possible scenario of a thing before it ever even happens. So, you know.
I go through entire conversations.
Oh, yeah. And I continue to go through things that already happened that I wish had gone differently, and just, it can't go differently. It already happened, but my brain continues to cycle through them, sometimes even years later. So...
Yeah. Brains do weird things.
Yes, they do.
Sometimes you're like, stop doing that.
Stupid brains. Stupid brains.
That's not helpful. And thank God her mom is home, because we don't see Diane Evans very often. No. And it's a great thing that she's there. She's obviously like very comforting to Isabel to, you know, wake up and have her mom be right there. Because it's also... or wake up or whatever, come to out of her daydream, whatever it was. I thought she was sleeping, but, you know, we don't really know for sure. Yeah, and that also is such a real thing for her, if she was sleeping, to wake up from sleeping, take a second, and then realize, oh yeah, like the person that I lost is still gone.
Yeah. Also, yeah, that feeling of waking up from a dream and not even realizing it's a dream at first.
Yep. And for that split second, you're like not in pain, and then it hits you.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing about parents, I think this is a good time to mention it, because, you know, Diane Evans is there, and we don't really see parents all that often on the show, other than Jim and sometimes Amy. And we don't see, I mean, Amy isn't in every episode, far from it, but we do see her more than Liz's parents and the Evans. Yeah. So something that Moore said was that scripts often had parents in them, had scenes with parents that ended up getting cut for multiple reasons. But they did initially have the parents, and they did want the parents to be more of the story, but because of budget, right?
Yeah.
The parents were all guest actors.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't like part of the regular cast, and so it cost money each time.
Mm-hmm.
So because of budget, they often got cut, and because of time. And when they were looking at, okay, we're over time, we have to cut something, and the show, when they're looking at what really is the center of the show, it's the kids. So they often ended up cutting those scenes. But it is good to know, because we're always like, where are their parents?
Yeah.
And it's good to know that like they were more involved initially. The plan was for them to be more involved. It just didn't work out that way.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, whether it's cut for time or it's cut for budget or either way,
Mm-hmm. So are we ready to move on to the DeLucas then?
Yeah, I think so.
And Michael is there.
He is there.
The fact that he answered the phone to me is like really
considerate.
Symbolic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he is not only there for Maria, he's there for Amy. He's there to support the whole family.
Yes, agreed.
Because Amy is also grieving. She obviously knew Alex since he was young.
Yeah. The kids grew
her daughter's
up together.
Best friend. And because Amy also has to be there for Maria.
Mm-hmm. So who's there for her?
Right. And people who are supporting others through grief need support themselves. And I learned that the hard way when I, realized I wasn't eating or sleeping enough because I was just so, concerned with my friend and making sure she was okay and eating enough. Because grief, for most people, takes away your appetite.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that Michael is there helping. And we find out that Sean is stuck in Albuquerque for a court date, which is what makes that IMDb intro make absolutely no sense. That Max is upset that Sean can be there for Liz when he can't, when he's literally not even in the episode.
I think there's like a split second that might be referring to, and I'll get to that.
Oh, yeah. So, but that tells us, it gives us the reason why Sean isn't going to be around in this episode, which, is kind of good to know since he has become kind of a regular part of the season. And, you would expect him to be in the DeLuca house helping take care of his cousin and his aunt in this emotional time. So,
yeah, I feel like they had to address, like, where's Sean? Especially because we're like, at the DeLuca house and like, Michael's the one supporting them. Yeah. Because I personally would have been like, where's Sean?
It gives us a reason to have Michael have to be there helping support and, gives us a reason for that lovely conversation that we have later in the episode between Amy and Michael.
And it gives him a reason to, be answering the phone, to be doing household things, to be helping out. And Sean, like Michael's the one to break the news to Sean about Alex, and Sean seems, to be concerned about his cousin and aunt, and says, "Could you look after my family?" And Michael says, "I'll take care of them."
Yeah, and then cut to the next scene, and we know that Sean was also concerned about how Liz was handling this because Max calls the house, and we find out that Sean had just called the house. And that Mrs. Parker thought that it was Sean calling back, which is, I think, what you were meaning. That is like the split second where maybe...
Split second, but I'm not even sure that Max, like, shows jealousy about that.
I mean, if he does, it's a split second visual cue. It's not...
Maybe a facial expression for a second, yeah.
Yeah, not a dialogue cue at all.
Yeah.
But, Mrs. Parker says that she's not there. And then we cut to the car yard, junkyard. I'm like, what's the word I want?
It's a junkyard.
Wherever it is, it's somewhere where Liz can find it and go on a little detective investigation to find out what's going on.
It is so not healthy for her to be doing this.
No, it is not at all.
Especially alone. Nobody else knows she's there.
Yeah.
Her best friend just died. She's like putting herself through more trauma. Yeah, she shouldn't be doing this. And she still has this like empty look on her face. Like she's still in shock, in denial. Like she's not, I don't know. She's
Yeah.
not really processing it. We haven't seen her cry.
And no, we do see her cry at the end.
At the end, yeah.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Because, Maria has cried a lot. You can, we saw her cry, and you can see it on her face throughout the whole episode. And she finds this photo.
Where Alex's face has been, not just, ripped out or, the picture was damaged, but his face has literally been cut out of the picture. Which also, that picture was one of the last things we saw in his house.
Yeah.
When he signs for the food and he's getting, weird in the brain, we see him acknowledge that picture on the shelf.
Yeah. And that was an important thing that we didn't mention. But, there's something up with him looking at the picture when he was upset.
Yeah.
So next is this interrogation, really, of this truck driver who is in a hospital bed, mind you.
Because he was also injured in this accident.
Yeah. I mean, Valenti is skeptical of him, giving him a hard time. How many beers did you drink? And the guy is, rightfully upset about that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say he's skeptical. He's downright accusatory.
Yes. Yeah. He is accusatory.
But then the driver tells him that Alex deliberately swerved towards him, which, starts to give us pause about what is going on here.
At the Evans, Isabel is feeling guilty, which is something we see
a lot of,
for the rest of the episode with her, really. And is a normal part of grief, people who were close to somebody especially. And some sources, since Kubler-Ross's book, some sources have added guilt as a stage of grief, or consider it as a part of the bargaining stage, which I think is pretty accurate. Yeah, I mean, it kind of is bargaining. It's if I hadn't done this, then this would happen, kind of playing out and wishing for different scenarios.
Yeah, some different scenarios that cannot be possible.
And she also vaguely references Grant Sorensen, which let's not forget that she just had a love interest die.
That's true. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was so wrapped up in Alex. Good point. I just my brain was just oh, Alex.
Because we care about Alex way more than we care about Grant. But that was a horrible, traumatic, tragic thing too. What Grant, what happened to him. And
just happened to her very recently.
So recently. It was a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
And she says to her mom, her mom's I wish I had special powers. And she's special powers don't help. Don't say that, Isabel. Come on, use your brain. Yeah. You can't say that.
Mom doesn't know.
But also, she can't just say special powers don't help. Of course, special powers would help. Certain special powers.
Yeah.
Max just doesn't have all special powers.
You just don't have the right special powers.
You need,
just don't have
necromancy special powers. Which, it is kind of dark.
Probably good. Probably good that we don't have necromantic powers as well.
We don't need that. And at the very end of the scene, Isabel says, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. But then it cuts away from that.
Yeah.
So, it leaves you wondering, what is she going to tell her?
Yeah. I mean, she has already, in her dream state, Alex has asked her what she wants to do about college and school. And, that kind of jogs our memories at that point, that she did just tell him in the last episode that she's going to graduate early and maybe go off to college early, and so we can kind of assume that it's that. But we get another.
But in my mind, because she had just brought up special powers, and she had just said this comment that was a little telling, a little too on the nose of wait, what's that supposed to mean? Special powers don't help, So to me, I was she just brought this up, and now she's well, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. That I was wait, is she?
I'm an alien. Max is an alien too.
It seemed to me that they were maybe trying to suggest that.
And then we head to school the next day, and there has a memorial has popped up on Alex's locker, and there are people that we've never seen before crying over his locker and leaving notes and flowers, and I feel that's very common situation.
Pretty typical.
And Liz is not about it, and neither is Maria. They are not happy to be seeing people that they're going to talk about it more later under the bleachers, but there's all these people who did not know Alex, did not love Alex like they did, and are taking up space in this grieving process for lack of a better word.
Right. For lack of a better, like, concept also.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because, like, it is common, I think, for people to feel like, you know, this is my grief that I'm going through. You didn't even know him. Like, I'm the one who deserves to be feeling this pain and this love for him and this loss. But grief is not a limited entity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't take up space in grief because the space isn't limited.
Yeah.
That, like, somebody grieving doesn't take away from your grief. But I don't fault them for feeling how they feel. I mean, you know, people deserve to kind of process and deal with loss however they need to, as long as they're not harming others.
Yeah.
Maria is, like, wearing sweats. She looks depressed, which is also a stage of grief. Also, the stages aren't always linear, right? Like, they're always listed in that order, but, like...
Yeah, they don't necessarily happen in that order. Liz is in anger.
Yeah. Liz is in anger and she's in denial. Maria is in the depression stage and in anger. You know?
Yeah.
Because here, like, Liz is in denial also that she is mourning somebody.
Yeah.
Because Maria asks her how she's doing. She's like, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
And Maria calls her out. She's like, no, you're not. And she shows the photo, says she found it in the wreck. And Maria is very
like, you
disturbed.
went there? Like, yeah, Maria is super distressed and upset that Liz would have gone to the crashed car and, like, dug around in there. It's very weird and inappropriate.
Yeah, Maria is super angry about it.
Yeah.
And then Logan Eccles is at the sheriff.
Yeah.
Saying, I deliver a lot of cold food.
Yeah. Because I'm bad at my job.
Yeah, clearly.
Apparently. But also, you gotta think, like, this is before smartphones. How did you know where to deliver stuff? Like, do you have, like, a physical map that you unfold and look at? Like, did you print out MapQuest directions? In which case, you still have to, like, follow them to the letter. And if you miss a turn, how do you find your way back to where you're going? Like, I remember those days.
Also, usually if you print it out, it's, like, also with a map. Because, if you lose your spot, if you, like, lose where you are. But I think in that time, most delivery drivers, they probably, like, used a map at the beginning. But I think most delivery drivers, like, knew the area very well.
Learn areas, yeah.
Yeah.
But the food delivery kid, he says that he was acting like it was the end of the world, which kind of lines up with the suspicions that we now have from the semi-truck driver who says that he purposely veered towards the semi. So, I mean, you can't fault Sheriff Valenti for feeling the way that he feels. He's trying to be a good detective and trying to put together the pieces from the other people who had contact with Alex.
And after Logan leaves, I don't know his name. They said Jerry? I don't know.
Yeah,
they said
I think
his
it's
name,
Jerry.
But I don't care. He's Logan Eccles. He, after he leaves, Valenti is talking to Hansen. And Hansen suggests what everything is looking like, that it really is looking like suicide. And Valenti is not ready to accept that.
No.
And gets angry and is in denial. And I kind of feel like he is too close to this and should not be on this case.
Yeah, he probably shouldn't.
It's, like, absolutely a conflict of interest. And Hansen also says something that we didn't know yet about that, like, Alex's teachers had noticed a change in his mood and in his behavior over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So it seems like this wasn't necessarily something that was just suddenly on that day.
Yeah, that there have been signs that people have been noticing.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't put them together to this sort of situation until afterwards, which I feel like is often the case.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's so important for especially teachers and people who work in a high school, and really everybody, actually, to know the signs of depression and, kind of warning signs of something like suicide.
So we touched a little bit on this scene that it comes up next, which is when they're under the bleachers. It kind of continues, a lot of people being upset and pissed off and angry. But we do find out here that the boys are going to be pallbearers for the funeral, that Mr. Whitman has reached out to Kyle and asked that they all be pallbearers, which...
And it all makes it feel a little more real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that the funeral is the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And now Logan Eccles, Jerry, food delivery kid, is being a dickwad.
Mm-hmm. Excitedly telling people.
Yeah.
Because he was like the last one to see Alex, as far as we know. And angry Liz shows up.
Yes, she does. She is not having any of it.
Liz is clearly in her anger stage of, like, going through the anger stage of grief. But this is a very good reason to be angry.
Yes, it is.
I would also approach angrily.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to ask him some questions, she says.
Yeah.
And then we go back to under the bleachers, and Isabel tells people that she is going to graduate early and go to college in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Max is angry about it. Maria doesn't want to talk about it. She's like, why are we talking about this? This is not, like, we have more pressing things.
Yeah, this is not what's important right now.
I understand her feeling that way. I also understand Isabel feeling the need to tell everybody this.
Yeah.
And Isabel is also going through her own shit. Like, leave her alone.
Hurting.
Let her talk about what yeah. And Michael is like, this isn't a decision we have to make right now. Which Isabel calls out.
Yeah, this is not a we decision. This is a me decision.
Yeah. I feel like this is kind of the first we're seeing, like, King Max in this episode.
Yeah.
I feel like he hasn't really, like, stood up and been like, I'm in charge here, like he sometimes does, until this moment.
Yeah. And then we cut to the Valenti house, and Liz is there showing the picture to Valenti and discussing this with him. And we find out that Valenti has come to terms with the idea that this is potentially a suicide. And, even when he seemed a little bit against the idea before, he's coming around. The pieces are fitting together and looking like it could be suicide. And here's more denial from Liz. She absolutely does not believe him. She gets very upset about him and doesn't want to hear any of it. And she leaves.
So I also think that this is part of bargaining. That, like, her, like, she's trying to find a way to postpone and, like, avoid her feelings.
Yeah.
By staying busy and being so sure that there's something else going on and, trying to find a way to, like, change something about the situation or find answers, even though it won't bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, an interesting thing about the dialogue in this scene, Moore said, this dialogue, her being angry, was pretty much born directly out of a confrontation that Sherry had with him and Jason Katims earlier in the season. That she had problems she wanted to discuss. So they, were willing to discuss it with her, went to her trailer, and they had a very long conversation. It was very charged. And he said that she was, like, being very strong and, like, angry and speaking, like, kind of the same way that Liz does in this scene, that she was like, no, I will not. And, like, you will tell me this and this will happen. And he said pretty much that, like, a lot of the dialogue in the scene was straight from her mouth. And, it was the way that she dealt with her anger. And and that when she first got the script, she totally recognized it and said that it said, like, oh, this is familiar.
Yes, this, I recognize this. I can access this emotion again.
Yeah. So I thought that was funny. And the picture, I mean, cutting himself out of the picture, like, it's not all that crazy when you're looking at it in the context of a suicide theory.
Yeah, it's not.
Of this theory.
Then we head back to the Evans household, and Max is in his room. It looks like he's probably trying on his suit for tomorrow to get ready.
Oh, but there was one moment that after Liz left. I don't know if this is, like, her kind of accepting or just kind of, like, physically reacting to what Valenti had just said.
Oh, yes.
When she, like, goes outside, and I thought she vomited, like...
Yeah.
I think she didn't actually vomit, but she's having a physical reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I forgot. I did not make a note there because it's just a very small moment.
It's very small, yeah, but important, or, like, a strong moment.
Yeah. And then she doesn't want to be alone, which is understandable. She shows up at Max's house and just wants some company. She's upset, she's angry, and asks if she can stay with him.
Mm-hmm. And you know, she tells Max about they're going to write it in their report that it was a suicide. She's furious about it. And Max agrees. He's like, I don't think, you know, he's like, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have done that. So at this point, Max is agreeing with her.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, like, he'll handle it.
Yeah.
He's going to go talk to them so they don't put it in the report.
And then there's this weird thing where I'm assuming maybe, like, we're supposed to hear, like, her stomach grumble or something, but I don't know. I watched...
The captions said that her stomach grumbled.
I don't hear a stomach grumble. I have watched this episode so many times, and I do not hear anything there.
I didn't hear it.
It drives me crazy. I don't hear a stomach grumble or anything, but that's obviously what's supposed to have happened because she goes like, oh, it's so embarrassing. And he's like, are you hungry? When was the last time you ate?
And she can't really remember.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like we've talked about, totally typical for somebody mourning. And also often a sign of depression, which, as we talked about, is one of the stages of grief.
Yep.
And Michael bringing what Amy thinks is tea, but it's actually hot buttered
rum. Yum.
Buttered rum. I had to look it up, and it says mixed drink containing rum, butter, hot water or cider, a sweetener, and various spices.
Yep.
And we have this beautiful moment between Michael and Amy.
I love this scene.
And she, you know, like, all the care he's been giving to Maria is not lost on her. And it means she's so grateful.
Yeah, I love it. And she says that she hopes to see more of him and he's always welcome in this house. And then I love her afterthought, which is, welcome on the couch.
Yeah. She's like, oh, wait, let me clarify. Yes. You may not stay in her bed.
You may stay on the couch, good sir.
Mm-hmm. And she also, I mean, I think she's also learning more about him.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he is a minor and brought her a rum drink and then explains that, like, his foster dad, Hank was his name, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, that fucking abusive asshole.
Yep.
Yeah, that he, like, taught him to make drinks.
Yeah.
So, so Amy is learning more about Michael's upbringing and kind of his trauma.
Mm-hmm. And then Izzy is dreaming or imagining, again, whichever we decide it is. And she's still blaming herself that she shouldn't have brought him into her life. It's so sad. This is like where I feel like she comes to acceptance. She's still sad about it, but this is where she comes to her acceptance point. That he's really gone and that he needs to, like, go from her dreams also for her to be able to heal and recover.
And there's also some real, like, a very clear example of bargaining in this scene. When he says, he's like, I have to go or whatever. And she's like, please don't go.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm already gone. Which obviously, like, this is all her.
Yeah. It's
you
all
know, it's
her
like,
mind.
it's not actually Alex Whitman that she's talking to. It's all her.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she's bargaining and then accepting and realizing, like, he is gone. And she's using her dream to process this and to get to this stage of acceptance.
Yeah.
And this really got me when he's like, bye, Isabel, and they show him walking out. And this whole shot it's a long tracking shot. They didn't make any cuts for a while until it cuts back to Isabel, you know, saying goodbye. And this is also Colin Hanks's real exit from the show.
Ugh.
And we get, like, this kind of nice moment, which, like, usually happens, I feel like, later on in the grief process. But it's really nice to see at the Evans house, at the Evanses.
Either way.
Max and Liz are reminiscing, and they're, like, remembering funny moments together and kind of having this, like, nice moment of remembering Alex. And then, you know, she goes to leave and, like, tells him she saw him kissing Tess.
Yep. Which, you know, makes things awkward.
Yep.
But, I mean, they were already awkward whether or not he knew it. She, I'm sure, was already feeling awkward about it. You know what else I think is awkward? Is they're down in the kitchen eating mac and cheese together, and Isabel is upstairs grieving and crying and dreaming about how much she loves Alex and how he's gone. Because assumably she's at home.
Yeah, no, she's like in bed.
And nobody is like, Isabel, do you, like, maybe you should eat something? Do you need anything? Like, there's just this whole other thing happening in the same house that there's no acknowledgement of what the other person in the house is going through, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah. And at the funeral, Maria is singing Amazing Grace, singing like later verses.
Yeah. Verses that I'm not familiar with.
Me neither. No, and that's Ronald D. Moore said, like he looked up Amazing Grace and found verses he had never heard and thought it would be interesting to start with those. Just go right into those. And then kind of separately, a little ways away, right? Max and Valenti are talking.
It's almost like when things are wrapping up and people are maybe heading out and...
Yeah, right. The funeral's over at this point. Max is yelling, which apparently the network really liked.
Okay.
They thought it showed strength. I don't know. Apparently they really liked anytime Max yelled.
I feel like, people gonna hate me for this, but I feel like Max is very monotone a lot of the time and very...
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Very, one note, he controls his emotions. He's very, level's a good word for it. So, I'm not saying I like him yelling at Valenti, but I do, he is showing more emotion here. He's showing his upset over the situation as well, instead of just being super level about the whole thing.
Yeah, you're so right. It does make sense that they would like that. It's like to actually see him animated and passionate. And Valenti gives Max the file to read. He lets him read the file, which, that can't be legal.
Yeah, probably not. But, when does Valenti follow the rules these days?
It's true. We don't follow rules on this show.
Yeah.
So apparently there was a cut scene here because they were 9 minutes over time, which 9 minutes is a lot to have to cut. Right? Producer Ashley, 9 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, 9 minutes is a nightmare.
Sorry, this episode's going to be a nightmare.
Yep. But this is a big one. There is a lot to talk about.
At least we don't have a hard cut, some network being like,
right.
We're not going to post it.
Has
it's
to
too long.
Fit in 42 minutes. No, we can do whatever we want.
Right. So there was a cut scene here of Kyle at home sitting in front of his Buddhist shrine, trying to meditate or pray. And Tess comes and sits with him. And Kyle says, he's having trouble dealing with it and having trouble meditating because he said that that Kyle was saying it was because he had to put his friend in a box the next day.
Oh, I would have liked to have seen, even if it was just not even that whole scene, but even just Kyle struggling and Tess coming and sitting with him, even if there was no words, even if it was just a very small scene.
We don't really see much of Tess in this episode.
No, we don't.
And it's, obviously she wasn't close with Alex, but obviously it's going to affect her too.
Yeah.
And, it's affecting the family that she is a part of.
Mm-hmm. You know what they could have done? They could have left out the birthday bit and just cut in them sitting together in front of the Buddha shrine.
Yeah. That would have been a better use of a Kyle moment, I think.
When we were talking about the birthday bit and I already knew about this part, when we were talking about the birthday bit, I was like, fuck, why didn't they cut this?
Yeah.
So, yep, you're right.
Yeah, because that's kind of a long scene, too. For something that then doesn't ever tie in anywhere else in the episode.
At all, yeah. So is this a wake?
I believe so.
Is that, a thing after a funeral?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Michael is getting food for Maria, and it's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Just we repeatedly see him taking care of her.
Yeah. And we see this sweet little interaction between Liz and Mr. Whitman, who is just so tall.
Yeah.
He's just so tall. And she just is so
and
small.
And she's so short, yeah.
Yeah.
So you really notice it.
Yeah, but she wants to know if she can go sit in Alex's room, which is kind of sweet.
Mm-hmm. It's nice. Like, yes, she does snoop around in the end, but it's nice to see that she's sitting there playing his bass and like looking pensive and was in there just to be in his room.
Yeah. And then wants him to give her some direction, point her in the right direction of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then she notices this Robert Frost book sitting on his desk, which has, a page marked in it. And what's marked is it's a poem called Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost.
Which is probably his most famous poem.
Mm-hmm. And she reads through some of it, and then she notices what was marking the place, which is concert tickets that he had just purchased and that were for a concert, assumably for him and Isabel to go to together on a date.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to just talk about like the poem for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was deliberate.
Oh, absolutely.
So the part that she reads is, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." So this poem is about, a person walking through the woods, stopping by the woods on a snowy evening, and seeing a fork in the road, a fork in the path.
Mm-hmm.
And basically being tempted by and wanting to go down this kind of risky, more dangerous, path that is less traveled, but remembers his obligations to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, that he wanted to continue with his life. He had to go back to his life instead of exploring, going on this adventure and this new path, which thematically makes sense to have here, because this is her being like, wait, like this poem, because he realized he had obligations, and like, why would he leave? He had obligations.
Yeah. I feel like I'm sighing a lot in this episode.
Oh, yeah. So Liz calls everybody into Alex's room and is like very serious, telling them about they're going to put suicide in the report.
Which Max kind of agrees with now after having read the report and the evidence.
Max is convinced.
But nobody else is on the side of Max and Valenti. Even Kyle, who Valenti is his dad, who he knows and trusts. Even Kyle says he agrees with Liz, that this is not something that Alex would have done. Which
is like starting to sow the seeds of humans versus aliens. I think when Kyle is like, wait, I agree with Liz. I'm on Liz's side here.
Yeah.
That's like the very first of like, Also, I don't know if you noticed, like, Maria's like speech is slowed. She just seems like she's like very low energy and like just seems very depressed.
Yeah. I mean, she's emotionally and I'm sure physically exhausted by what they've been going through.
Liz is very angry that Max is saying, well, I actually do think it was suicide. She won't accept that and tells them about these Beth Orton tickets. I didn't know who Beth Orton was, so I looked her up.
Okay.
I'll try to make this quick. Moore was getting into her music at that point in time, so like that's why he put it in here.
Got it.
Her music is described as folktronica, mixing elements of folk with electronica.
All right, I would check that out.
Her music has been featured in Felicity, How to Deal, Charmed, Dawson's Creek, Roswell, Vanilla Sky, and Grey's Anatomy. So, like, a lot of WB.
And then Grey's Anatomy, which has been on so many years, surely everybody has been featured on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my god, yeah. And Grey's Anatomy is, like, big into the music, too.
Yeah, the emotional interludes.
And Beth Orton's Wikipedia page mentions this episode by name.
Oh.
Because it's, like, she's a big part of this episode.
I mean, that makes sense.
And did you clock that Michael used present tense when talking about him?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Because Michael said, we know what kind of guy he is.
Yeah, he wouldn't do this.
It's hard. It is hard to adjust to using a different tense.
And then our kind of final scene of the episode is Liz has gone back to the crash down, but there's also some sort of like flashback. She's, it seems to me a weird weird choice that, I mean, I guess because it also takes place in the Crashdown, that she's remembering his striptease from Isabel's birthday.
And we see a nice nipple shot.
Yep.
His nipple is in the flashback.
Yep. But we do get some flashes of some other scenes, like the pilot episode and some other little moments of Alex throughout the series so far. And then this is when Liz finally breaks down and starts crying. The first time we've seen her cry in the whole episode.
So the song playing originally when the show aired was a Beth Orton song called She Cries Your Name, which is where this episode got its name.
That makes so much sense.
That has really been bothering me.
Yeah, it's like, where the hell did that name come from? Yeah, that's where it came from.
Ugh. Now I gotta look up this song.
The song is like such a huge part of the episode.
Yeah.
Now that you know that, and like that it's at the end here, but it's not on the DVD or streaming. So instead, we got a song called Silence by a band called Polaroid, which like fit, you know, the vibe of it fit.
It's not it's not one of the worst ones.
Right. But it's, you know, it initially was like the song, you know, the namesake of this. Also, like, at first it looks like she's like sorting the photos, right? She's like putting them into piles, and then it shows her just like wildly throwing them around the table. So like, I don't know what she's doing. She's looking at photos, but like...
Yes. She's distraught.
Oh no, totally. But it like, at first she's like putting them into piles. It looks like this is like part of her investigation. And then she obviously is just emotional, you know, like she's just kind of dealing with it. And we see her finally cry.
And then Jerry, the delivery guy, shows up, and
Logan is there.
He has interesting information to share with her, which is that the credit card company kicked back the credit card receipt because of the way he signed it, which is in binary code, which is ones and zeros. For those of you that don't know, that's computer language.
Do you speak that computer language, Lorena?
I mean, I had to translate it. Binary is like really involved because you only have 2 digits to represent everything else in the universe. So I did look it up. The way he signed it is 111-00100-100-111-011-011-001.
Okay.
So I tried to plug that into binary to text. Did not work. It's not enough. It's not enough digits to have been binary to text. So inaccurate. It translates to 936409.
Okay.
I can't think of anything that maybe that would translate to. But she says, I mean, apparently Liz, the science gal, does speak binary because she says it means...
fluently, just...
binary. I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep.
Also, FYI, you could totally, like, because I was like, wait, like, would the credit card company kick that back? Because, like, you can have that as your signature, but, like, not if that wasn't always his signature. They, you know, they would kick it back. But, like, you can use any symbol, anything. It doesn't have to be your name for your signature.
Yeah, you just have to be consistent.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I think this might be an episode to skip Hot and Saucy.
I'm okay with that.
I just, I was thinking about it, and it's like, it just doesn't feel appropriate.
No, it doesn't. Ashley, did you want to share any thoughts as a first-time viewer of this?
Yeah. Okay, so confession to the listeners, I am a first-time watcher, but I did binge the back half of this season because I got really into it. So today, like, I had seen it before today's recording. However...
like a few months ago, right?
Oh, yeah. It's been a while. So I will say, like, they say it in this episode a couple of times. They say the end of the world. And I had been spoiled on Alex's death because of the internet. I didn't know anything about it, really. I saw it on a Google search. So I was under the assumption whenever I looked at all of the titles, I thought the end of the world, like, I thought that was going to be the one. I was like, that's going to be when Alex dies. And then it wasn't. And then we got to Cry Your Name, and then they say the end of the world a couple of times in it. And I was like, so I wasn't, like, way off.
No, not at all. That's so funny.
And then in the beginning when he picks up the picture after the delivery, and he's like clearly in a different mood. I kind of, the first time I saw it, I thought that he was getting overwhelmed with having two ladies. Like,
yeah.
because we know he has her in Sweden, but he just had a great night with Isabel and seems to have plans to continue that. And so I was like, maybe this is just like him trying to deal with, like, I'm going to have to figure out a way to break up with this other girl. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Like, you didn't, like, clock it as, or you flag it as being significant. Like,
depressed or anything. Right. I just thought, oh, he's just, like, struggling with how to break up with someone, which is hard.
Yeah.
So that was my initial thought. And then it cut straight to the accident. And then I was like,
oh no.
Oh, no.
Straight to the accident. Yeah.
Yeah, immediately. I was shocked that it was in the beginning of the episode. I guess I had it pegged for like a close to the end of an episode type deal that they were going to do. I don't know. So yeah, I was like, okay, we're just jumping right in.
Yeah, it's the type of thing typically you'd think like an episode would end with that, and it's like but I feel like when it's a cliffhanger, like did they live or did they die, it's usually that they lived. When it's that sort of cliffhanger, you leave the episode being so distraught, and then in the next episode you find out it's okay, which would not have been in the case with this one, which I mean almost would have been worse if they did that kind of traditional flow of a cliffhanger and then it did end badly.
That's so true. And then also want to know why are they in school?
After their friend
It's presumably the next day, and it's their best friend.
Yeah.
I would assume that they would not be in school.
I stayed home from school for far less.
Yeah. I mean, I lived, and my best friend didn't go to school for a full week after my car accident in high school.
A friend who wasn't in the accident?
Yeah.
She just was so distressed that you were injured.
So I just think it's strange that they even showed up at school at all.
Yeah.
And then also I was really, really worried about Liz and her aggression.
Yeah.
So when she did finally cry at the end, it was like, oh, okay. All right. We're getting through a little bit, because I really was afraid she was going to get stuck in that anger stage.
Yeah.
And this was really the episode that I really fell in love with Michael. Because even all of the good that he has done up to this point usually is offsetting something bad that he did.
Yeah.
But in this episode, he is just there for them and doesn't do anything shitty to anyone. He's just perfect the whole time. So this is what really solidified, okay, yes, I love this dude.
And the one thing, and it wasn't him being shitty. It wasn't. And we kind of skipped over that. We didn't really talk about when it really became hardcore aliens versus humans and the aliens stormed out. And Michael obviously was put in this awful position and felt obligated to get up and go with, his family who was leaving the room, which meant he left Maria.
Yeah, he could have
he could have said something. Yeah, he didn't say anything. But that's still it's
minor. Minor compared to all the good he did in this episode.
All the good, yeah. Totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, then if we're not doing hot and saucy, I guess it's time to wrap up this episode, listeners.
The next one's going to be so much more fun, right?
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We will be back in 2 weeks on Tuesday, June 22nd with Season 2, Episode 18, It's Too Late and It's Too Bad.
You can follow us on all the social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and now on TikTok at Roswell Hot Sauce, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Roswell Hot Sauce. And as always, you can find show notes and information about us and our podcast over at RoswellHotSauce.com. Or shoot us an email if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or just want to say hi over at RoswellHotSauce@gmail.com.
Pass the Hot Sauce is produced and edited by Ashley Hullett. Our theme music is by David Belcourt, and our logo was designed by Billy Murray.
Until next time, remember...
And as far as I'm concerned, you'll always be welcome in this house.
Thank you.
Welcome on the couch.
Right.